Welcome to this episode of This Is My Offer. I am Manish Govil. I'm the Global Segment Leader for Supply Chain at AWS. My guest today is Courtin, Vice President of Industries and Global Alliances at Tecsys. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Manish. Really happy to be here. So first, let me tell you a little bit about myself and then about who is Tecsys. So first of all, I've been in supply chain for over 20 years. And here at Tecsys, I'm responsible for our overall industry and go-to-market for global alliances. And who is Tecsys? Tecsys is a 40-year-old company. We are focused primarily on the supply chain space. And as you can see from here, we have experienced tremendous growth in the past few years. We are a global company headquartered in Montreal with offices across the world. Our European office is Denmark. We are focused primarily on the healthcare, distribution, and retail verticals. And we're really excited about our work with AWS in terms of bringing our solutions to our customers. So looking forward to this conversation, Manish.
As you're talking about your global company, you hear from a lot of customers as you're having conversations about the supply chain challenges. What is at the top of their mind these days?
Manish, and you know I've been in supply chain for a long time, right? When I mentioned being in supply chain for 20 plus years, many of those years with you at I2. Yeah. And I think a lot of the problems we've seen and we're still seeing today are the ones that we've always dealt with. But more and more what we're seeing, and especially coming out of the pandemic, is our customers are asking us, how do they get greater visibility into their end-to-end supply chain? How do they better meet their customer needs through solutions such as warehouse management, transportation management, things of that nature? And I think that those issues, right, have been with us forever. But what happened coming out of the pandemic, it just sort of amplified the importance of being able to have that visibility across your supply chain to better understand, obviously, what your customer is looking for, but then what is happening throughout the network that is your supply chain, and how do you better meet those customer needs? So I think that for me, the big theme, coming into 2024 and coming out of 2023 is really increased visibility. And I know that's sort of an evergreen, if you will, in supply chain, right? How do we get better visibility? How do we understand how things are happening in our supply chain? But, the pandemic really shone a light on this of, if I don't know what's happening, if I can't manage what I can't measure. And supply chain of all the places we work is the one that really amplifies this. So I think in one word, it's visibility, and visibility because more visibility equals better reliance equals better customer satisfaction. So that's the big driver that we're seeing with our customers today.
Very interesting. So what are some of the innovations that are happening in these areas like warehouse management and those that you touched upon?
I think what's interesting about warehouse management, Manish, is that we're always seeing more and more innovation. And the reality is that we as consumers, we don't see that. We're invisible to it. But those of us like you and I who are in this space, we get the privilege of seeing it on a daily basis. So a couple of things that we're seeing. One is, and I'm going to use this term right away, but it's AI, right? How do we use AI better in the warehouse? And we can have a day-long, week-long, month-long conversation about what that really means. But from our perspective, it's really almost boiling AI down to simple use cases within the warehouse. So for example, creating a better pick path for your FTE going through the warehouse, doing a better job understanding where to slot inventory within your warehouse. So we're seeing that. That's one area. Number two, which in a way has sort of lost the top billing because of AI, is automation. Our customers are still asking from the warehouse perspective, what type of robotics and automation can they employ today to do better in their warehouse, to do better picking, better put away, better cycle count. So I'm really excited about that space. And the third area I think we're seeing a lot of innovation within the warehouse, I think is more sort of holistic thinking. And I feel like it's something that we've always talked about from the tech space, but the practical side is starting to really take hold. What I mean by that is we have a lot of clients who have multiple warehouses, and the idea of running each warehouse independently has sort of gone away, meaning we now have the systems in place to better manage a warehouse or warehouses as a holistic inventory repository. And I think that's another area of innovation that we're seeing more and more. And maybe it's not innovation, Manish. Maybe it's more that the technology has gotten to a point where now our clients can actually execute on that as opposed to just thinking about it.
No, those are great points, right? So how are you leveraging these technology that you talked about, including the power that AWS cloud brings to you and embedding them in your offerings. So, what are the offerings that you are bringing to your customers?
Manish, at Tecsys, we have a number of offerings. And I mentioned in the beginning, we're a supply chain company at heart, obviously. So if you look at what it is we offer, right, across the board, it really is to address the customer's needs when it comes to supply chain. And for us, it really encompasses everything from, some of the demand sensing through the entire execution, the warehouse management, the point of use, transportation, things of that nature. And if you look at this, right, it really then extends beyond that, right, into partnerships around e-commerce platforms, point of sale, et cetera. And of course, all this really woven in tightly with your offering for AWS and the cloud. And where we see the value of this, right, where we're really sort of harnessing that power and that potential is if you think about this and you look at, if we just focus on the warehouse aspect, being able to be tied into, a cloud offering that has sort of takes care of all the necessary items that might concern an operator, things such as scalability, security, data cleanliness, all these things. All of a sudden, if we can eliminate those concerns and really focus on the work at hand, that's where we see our customers really being able to push their thinking and their ability to execute on what they're trying to do. And I think that's something that we're really excited about when it comes to the offerings we have out there, because at the end of the day, and I'm going to go into history lesson here, Manish, but if we go back to our days at i2, a lot of this was on-prem. We hadn't really touched the cloud yet. And a lot of the concerns we had right off the bat were how are we going to secure things? How are we going to communicate? How are we going to scale? Now those issues are sort of taken off the table, so to speak, and put to bed. And now we can focus on how do we apply some of these tools at a scale that we otherwise weren't able to address the problem, which, let's face it, require that type of scale to meet. So that's the part that's really exciting from our perspective, is really to be able to offer these types of solutions built on a backbone that allows our customers to some degree not to have to worry about some of the old things we had to worry about when we put in systems, and really focus on how do these tools empower them to get their jobs done.
Now, that's fascinating. So basically all the technology that is available, including from the offerings that you talked about and how customers can leverage that. So can you touch upon a little bit of these technologies in action and how a customer leveraged those and what benefits they got out of it?
Absolutely. And there's countless stories across the industries we cover. So as I mentioned, healthcare and distribution and retail. So I'll focus on two, one in healthcare and one in distribution. In healthcare, we had a customer who, being able to leverage the ability to tap into their warehouse management system on a scale that they weren't able to before, they're able to consolidate their inventory to distribute to their hospital networks in a much more efficient manner. And Manish, you and I both know this, or all of us who are listening to this know this, right? I always argue sort of the industry that we're all part of is retail, and the second one is healthcare. And maybe it's inverse, where we're all included in the healthcare industry and secondarily in the retail industry. So this is really impactful to all of us as individuals. So when this one client of ours, was able to scale up their ability to then better manage their inventory, the cost aside, the efficiency aside, that was fantastic. But what the really impact that I saw that I think is important for us to think about is now when, if Guy has to go in for an operation and I'm heading in, I'm very certain, if not 100% certain, that the proper items that are needed to perform the operation on me will be there at the right time in the right place. And when you think about this, right, in the past, we've seen stories of, well, someone came in for a knee replacement surgery, and that knee part was somewhere in the loading dock. No one had visibility into it. No one knew where it was. And now all of a sudden you literally have nurses scrambling to find that before the operation starts. Now, of course, that's a little bit of a dramatic story, but it's a real one. But what we're seeing today with, many of our customers, this one in particular, is this ability to have the notion or the understanding of where the inventory is, when it's being called upon, when it will show up at the right place at the right time. And let's face it, when it comes to the healthcare space, Manish, it's one thing if I don't get, my book or CD delivered to me on time. It's a whole other thing if I don't get some of those medical products delivered at the right time. That's one. Another one I saw, which was really interesting, was in the distribution side, leveraging our solution to really pivot during the pandemic to be able to do different things with their inventory. So As we all know, pandemic hit, shutdown, lockdown, everything got closed. So obviously the desire, the need to be able to do e-commerce spiked. And all of a sudden, a lot of our customers had inventory sitting in places that were otherwise allocated for things not named e-commerce, but the ability to leverage our system to pivot and to tap into those inventory pools to then fulfill online orders was really, I don't want to say just a game changer, but it made a lot of these companies survive the pandemic, where this inventory that otherwise could have just sat there and been stagnant was all of a sudden activated and actually profitable, where you could actually fulfill from different locations that otherwise you couldn't. And again, that shows to me the power of the system and the flexibility of the system to be able to pivot and to, again, leverage the technology to apply to your supply chain to do things differently than you otherwise thought. And this goes back to this notion of being resilient, the notion of being able to answer your customers' needs. And I think, again, that is really where supply chains are and need to be moving forward.
Very exciting. So, how do customers actually get started on this transformation journey with Tecsys and AWS?
I mean, it all starts that first step. And I sound like a first grade school teacher here, but it's the reality. And I think that first step is really reaching out, obviously, to folks like yourself or myself or anybody at Tecsys or AWS to talk a little bit more about what is their supply chain issues, or what are their supply chain issues today. And it's not, and I would argue on this too, Manish, there's no issue too small or too big that we can't discuss. And what do I mean by that is, a lot of times there's small use cases or issues that people think are minor, but when we start looking at them, we realize the big impact it could have to solve for that. So to me, it's always to start with a conversation, right? I work at a technology company, so I always say, well, you got to buy my stuff. But the reality is, we got to talk first. Understand what are your issues. I think it's, again, it's cliched, but it's looking from the customer back in. Regardless if it's B2B or B2C, there's always a customer, a C at the end of that chain. So it's really to think about that from that perspective. Have the conversation, leverage. I know you've got some fantastic experts on your side, and we do as well. We're always very happy to have that initial conversation, just to understand, like, what are your issues? Where do you think some of the issues are coming from? What is the end goal you're trying to achieve? And then let's work backwards and try to figure out, what are the places that we could help? And maybe there's some we can't, but we can direct you in those right directions. But it all starts with that conversation, Manish, because too oftentimes I think we fire drill, right? Where there's a burning platform, we're trying to solve for it, and we don't realize that there's a bigger issue at hand or a bigger opportunity at hand. And until we have that conversation, we can't get to that point. So I encourage anybody who's looking to embark on this to reach out to us. Let's have that first conversation and see where it goes from there.
I really enjoyed this conversation, Guy. Thank you for taking the time to be on this episode. And we look forward to helping our customers together.
Likewise, Manish. And again, thank you so much for having me here. And we look forward to some more conversations in the future.